Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the Sony A7R Mark IV. This full-frame 61 megapixel mirrorless interchangeable lens camera is priced at $3,500 US, and of course it succeeds its predecessor, the A7R Mark III. Now I've covered every generation of A7 camera pretty much. And most of Sony's APS-C offerings over time. And this was a fantastic camera and still is. It debuted in 2017. We have a new sensor here, moved from 42 megapixels to 61. Clearly, Sony is taking a shot at medium format. Just a quick look at specifications here on the back of the box. You can see that 61 megapixel sensor, the ISO 100 to 32,000. That is the same range as the A7R Mark III, but the key difference being the fact that we have a 61 megapixel sensor, so to keep that range is impressive for the engineering side of Sony. 10 frames per second, also the same as the A7R Mark III. Now here is where things get interesting. Phase detection points, 567. That's as opposed to the 399 found in the A7R Mark III. The interesting part of that is that in terms of percentage of coverage for the sensor, because we've moved from 42 megapixels up to 61, it's almost the same. I think it's something like 68% versus 74% here on the A7R Mark IV. The other big thing on autofocus, real-time eye autofocus and real-time tracking in video. That does not exist in the A7R III. The A7R III did get the eye autofocus and pet, animal eye, even though we're all animals, eye autofocus, but it does not have the real-time tracking in video that you'll find in the A6400 and now the RX100 Mark VII. Silent shooting, of course, 5-axis image stabilization, the same in-body stabilization found in the A7R III. And then with the dual slots, we now have an improvement there. Instead of having one that's a UHS 1 and one that's a UHS 2, they've bumped up the speed for both of those slots. Touch focus also has been improved. Supposedly Sony claims faster speed on the touch screen, but you're not going to be able to use that to navigate menus. HLG is still there, as is S-Log and other profiles. And we also have, instead of just Type-C like we have with the A7R Mark III, we have USB 3.2. So we actually have a faster transfer method. So now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, let's actually take this out of the packaging. And I did do a preview on this camera because it warranted one. I mean, this is a pretty big offering. I mean, it's the first time we've got a new sensor. See some accessories right out of the box. There's your USB Type-C cable. First thing that hits you. And you can actually, another thing improved here, I spun this the wrong way, is tethering, because with the new wireless chipset that this camera sports, we can actually now tether without using a USB connection, which I think is important for a lot of studio photographers if you don't want to actually be physically tethered, literally. So the new Wi-Fi chipset, that's pretty important. So let's start off taking a look at the body. And the body has gotten larger, very similar in size, but the grip has been made larger. They've also improved the weather sealing and overall build quality, and I can already see the difference just holding it. I mean, if you felt that the previous generations didn't have a large enough grip for you, this is probably going to solve that problem. Now, we are still working with the exact same Z-series battery that was introduced with the previous generation of full-frame cameras, so the battery life is there. Definitely a big improvement from the W series. We have a new set of buttons. They've kind of changed the feel, tactileness. The joystick has even changed, even though it was a redesign on the A7R III. Screen is exactly the same. This does not flip out and around. For those of you that are wondering, that is your range of motion right there. That's it. This is not a flip around screen. That's not what it's designed for. However, on the EVF, the OLED EVF, we now have, I believe, 5.7 million dots. That is a bump up that I expect to see a appreciable gain there that you are going to enjoy. In terms of design cues, this door has changed. I'll be showing that probably in a separate video, comparing it directly to the A7R Mark III. As I mentioned, we now have 2 slots that support UHS-2 rather than a single, which makes a lot more sense. Down here, of course, the battery bay, exactly where you expect it. Other ports, and I can already see the construction change, the differences. We have our mic jack, headphone jack, and I believe that is our HDMI out. 14-bit RAW, of course, in terms of stills. No 4K 60p. A lot of people were disappointed by that. I expect that's going to be reserved for the A7S refresh, which I'm sure is still on its way. There is your Type-C and multi-port, aka micro USB. You can charge using either of these, but of course, your faster charging is going to come by way of the Type-C 3.2. And because it's 3.2 as opposed to 3.1 in the A7R, that is a mild advantage. Last but not least, your flash sync right there. So that covers everything as far as the body is concerned. Let's see what else is in the box. We have our camera strap, which I expected. Let's see what else is in there. I know we're going to find a battery. I'm just checking to see if there's, yeah, there's something underneath there. Let's see. We've got our Type-Z battery right there, which I'm not even going to take out of the box because I already have plenty of those. In fact, I have some generics that I'm going to be covering. Now, I don't necessarily recommend generics, but if they are from a reputable manufacturer, then not bad. You do get an included battery charger, something I think everyone who's spending $3,500 on a body is going to want to have. I, of course, have one of those, B&H Watson chargers to do multiple batteries at once. You just got to get the plates. And then last but not least, the actual power cable for that charger right there. I think that's everything. So the question becomes, is this the right camera for you? Do you believe that this is just a megapixel war? There they are side by side. Is that what Sony is engaged in now? I think to some degree that's accurate, but I have to say that overall, I don't think it's just about the megapixel count. I think it's really about taking a shot, as I said earlier, at the entire industry for studio photography, specifically medium format, and making the argument that you can cram enough dynamic range and ISO sensitivity into a full frame camera like this one with the 61 megapixel sensor. You can clearly see this is a beefier camera, not just the grip, but just about everything about it. Dynamic range, both of them have 15 stops, so that's another accomplishment. I mean, to have the sensor go from 42 to 61 megapixels and keep 15 stops of dynamic range should be something that still photographers greatly appreciate. I'm just thinking if there's anything else that I've left out, but I think I've pretty much covered everything, at least that an unboxing is going to. I mean, overall, this camera doesn't blow away the A7R Mark III, but it's an improvement in enough ways that I think it makes it attractive to the majority of professional studio photographers. On the video side, the only thing it really adds is that real-time tracking, which is a big thing. It's not a small thing. But in crop mode, and of course I'll be talking about this as I get deeper into reviewing the camera, in crop mode, if you go to APS-C crop, you do get 100% coverage with the autofocus system. So that is something at 26 megapixels and change. Now, you shouldn't buy this for that, but that is a nice added bonus to know that you get basically complete sensor coverage in autofocus if you do decide to shoot stills in a crop APS-C 26 megapixel format. One last thing I want to point out is that this does also have more aspect ratios for still shooting. It adds, I think, 3:2 and 1:1. I stand to be corrected. That'll come in follow-ups and direct comparisons. But again, you can just clearly see the body size difference. I mean, look at that grip. And that's going to help a lot of people. That door difference right there, no latching mechanism. Now it just pops out. And then on the back of the cameras, and look, I know a lot of reviewers, Sony's Select Group, which unfortunately I'm not part of, have had these cameras for over a month. But you can see the design changes. They're not huge, but they're there. They have changed them. Are those the reasons to purchase the camera? Absolutely not. In my mind, nothing at all. And then, again, as I mentioned, You can see how they've changed some things here on the left side of the body. But overall, excited to finally have this in the studio, excited to test it out, and eventually Sony's going to send me one. This is actually not mine. It's just for initial purposes, because Sony, I don't think, is going to get me a review unit until sometime in October. And by then, I don't know how relevant coverage of this is going to be, considering that coverage started over a month ago. But my coverage begins today, folks. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. As usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.